the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove Live. Here with my boy Chris from CP New York Sports Network. What is up, Chris? We are going full bore here tonight with everything about the Mets. A couple of signings already for the Mets. Again, nothing to be crazy excited about, but it's everything that we did for the last 24 hours has been depth moves that are extremely important to teams that are trying to contend, and winning franchises get these type of back end rotation guys, depth arms, and we're going to talk about everything we need to talk about. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I definitely appreciate it. We obviously aren't on our normal schedule for the roundtable on Monday night, but we got to give the people what they want and talk about these signings. It's like you said, it's not too exciting, right? These are kind of depth piece moves. A little bit of excitement to talk about in terms of the advanced analytics. We'll get into it a little bit about these guys, but other than that, we're here to reassure everyone that this is just the start of the hot stove season. We're going to see much, much more, and you'll be seeing our faces much, much more throughout this whole entire offseason. So happy to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have to really take a step back for a second and realize David Stearns is a calculated player acquisition guy. He's calculated. He's done this a million times with the Brewers. We talked about it on the roundtable multiple times. We all had the same opinion, same facts about it. David Stearns acquires and signs abundance of arms. He does it every year. If you look back, I look back the last 5 seasons he was the GM of the Brewers. Every time he signed guys to, non-guaranteed deals, minor league deals, a lot of arms, and the best ones come out of spring training. This is what he's going to do. I know you brought that up in the group chat and on Twitter or X, whatever the hell you want to call it. So
yeah.
Before we get started with everything like that, the Mets made 3 moves so far, signing Luis Severino, which is the biggest one so far, $13 million, 1 year, $2 million incentive bonuses. Again, a back into the rotation guy. People went absolutely insane. Why we would get Luis Severino? Luis Severino is not going to be your number 2 starter like the Yankees are trying to throw down their throats for years. We're not having that with Luis Severino. Joey Wendell, 1 year, $2 million, also included in incentive bonuses that can go all the way up to around $2.6 million. And then a couple hours ago, Mets signed relief pitcher Austin Adams, one year deal, and it's a partially guaranteed deal. And what that means is, well, in particular in his deal, is that he gets major league dollars during spring training, and if he doesn't make the team, that deal is not guaranteed. So if he doesn't make the team, it's not guaranteed. He gets a partial salary from the Mets, and if he makes the team, it's fully guaranteed. That's all it means. So it's nothing, crazy when it comes to that. So, Chris, the last time we spoke on the roundtable special Mets Hot Stove edition, the Mets weren't making moves yet. It was kind of slow. We heard a little bit of noise, but we didn't hear nothing about Severino until it happened, basically. So what are your thoughts on the 3 moves so far?
That's the exact MO of the New York Mets, baby. That's exactly what you got to love. They keep their moves quiet. Andy Martino actually kind of alluded to it. I know we were talking about it in the group chat before. He was kind of throwing out that I don't have a name on who the Mets are going to sign, but an acquisition is coming. He said it wasn't going to be a star player, and he was right about that, right? Luis Severino is not a star player. This is not a 2017, 2018 Luis Severino that we're getting that was an all-star in both of those years. He posted a solid 2022 and had a really down year in 2023. We all understand that. 1 year for $13 million, though, in the market of you just saw what Kyle Gibson got, you just saw what Lance Lynn got, and you just saw what Kenta Maeda got from the Detroit Tigers. This is on par with what the market value is for a fifth stick starter. And I really do believe, yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I really do believe that he is the fifth Sixer starter. And you know that Joel Sherman's already reporting they're going, quote unquote, full board. The whole theme of this live stream for the Japanese pitchers, Imanaga and Yamamoto. So rest assured, everybody, like I said, Luis Severino, and like you said, this is a depth signing. Now, the other hand is that he's not going to give you that many innings, right? Luis Severino doesn't go up to 150, 160 innings pitched. He's got around 100 even, 110.
Correct.
That issue that I see within itself, right? Especially if you go get those Japanese pitchers that might be on innings limit themselves, that could be an issue getting down into the lower end of the rotation with a guy like Severino and probably Lucchesi, who has his own injury issues at that sixth spot. That's my only concern. But in terms of the stuff that Luis Severino has, a five-pitch arsenal, he's got a cutter. He's got a curveball. He's got a slider. Fastball, obviously. He uses all of those pitches and distributes them really well. And obviously, everything was down in 2023 in terms of the advanced analytics, minus his fastball percentage and his fastball usage rate. But listen, it's a low risk gamble. It's an entirely low risk gamble. And I saw someone in the chat saying that they wanted Wade Miley instead of Luis Severino. Well, the reason I quite frankly think that they went Luis Severino is that I think they have bigger plans for a lefty in this rotation. They already have Quintana. They're going to have to add one more, whether it's Eduardo Rodriguez or Shota Imanaga. That's going to be your lefty. I don't think they're willing to roll with three lefties. And that's why probably Wade Miley was not, beside the fact that Wade Miley's 36 years old, that's probably why they didn't pursue Wade Miley. But I like all of these moves so far. And that's not me just being a homer, because honestly, these moves are nothing but depth, like you just said. If you are evaluating these moves like they're going to be mainstays of these teams, like you just said, Austin Adams signed a split contract. That means he gets a prorated MLB salary when he's up with the team. And when he's not, he goes back down to a minor league salary. What's the harm in doing that? At best case scenario with Austin Adams, you have an early bullpen guy, sixth inning guy that the Mets desperately lacked last season in 2023. You're taking a shot on a guy that had one of his best seasons in 2021. He has a three-pitch arsenal, primarily uses his slider. And if you value the FIP stat, which I personally don't, it kind of goes a little bit further than the traditional ERA. He's been pretty solid in that aspect as well. So I don't know. I think it's just a low risk, high reward signing. And I think all three of them, but especially the Severino and the Austin Adams signings, are very low risk, high reward. And you see these short-term contracts. Like I said, Mets fans, there's more coming. That's all I got to say right now about those signings at face value.
Absolutely. And, to go back to what you were talking about with Adams, sixth inning, fifth inning, sixth inning guy, mostly the early innings for bullpen arms. The Mets could not get to their best bullpen arms, which was Raley and Robertson. They couldn't get there. How many times Mets had leads going into the fifth or sixth inning and even the seventh inning, and they just couldn't get to their guys that they trusted the most in Robinson and Raley. They couldn't do that. And again, I'm not saying Adams is going to, be the best bullpen arm the Mets acquire or anything like that. But the one thing that is important, and you see teams do this all the time, get a ton of arms in here. And that's why the Mets have so many open roster spots available. You're going to see a lot of 1 year. You're going to see a lot of minor league deals, invites to spring training, partial guaranteed deals, split guaranteed deals, or even guys that are coming on 1 year deals to approve it type of deal. You just never know. Every year there's a bullpen that nobody knows anybody on that team, yet they could be top 5 in baseball. Every year it happens. And I'm not saying don't get big names, don't get a big name reliever. Of course you can, but that doesn't guarantee you nothing, right?
Yep.
You know, in 2022, the Mets had a really, really extreme good bullpen from top to bottom. They had no problem bridging to the seventh inning guy, the eighth inning guy, the ninth inning guy. They couldn't do that last year. And again, David Stearns knows what he is doing with pitching. The Brewers always have good pitching in the rotation and bullpen arms. Can anybody name anybody in the bullpen besides when it was Hader with the Brewers or Williams? I guarantee you can't. And yet they have one of the top 6 bullpens in all of baseball. So
Absolutely.
it goes back to the same thing with David Stearns. Trust the process. It might not look pretty right now, right? You know, like when you start a drawing and you have a couple of lines, and then at the end it looks like a masterpiece. It's a Van Gogh. That's what David Stearns does. And again, for people, would you rather have the big signings first and then this type of signings later? Yes, but it's a snail's pace right now. None of the big pitchers besides Nola and Gray. Nola took less money to go back to the Phillies, so that was a non-starter for the Mets. Sonny Gray was never coming to New York, so that's pointless to talk about. So everybody who the Mets are in on, Montgomery, Erod, Yamamoto, Imanaga, and who knows who else. They haven't signed anywhere, and there hasn't been much movement besides a little bit about Yamamoto. But every day, 2 days ago, there was no way the Mets were getting Yamamoto. Yankees are getting no matter what, right? That's what we heard. And then Joel Sermon
Yep.
gave the big middle finger to Martino and says, "Oh, yeah? Huh, look at this. We're going to actually, the Mets are big game hunting in the pitching market and looking to get Imanaga and Yamamoto." So, Chris, I see it in so many ways, and you saw the reaction on Mets Twitter. It's just absolutely insane. And the Mets targets, again, this is all obviously up in the air. We just don't know. I put a lot of guys on there. I know Ohtani's a pipe dream. I know Soto's probably not going to happen. That's okay, because if he's really not going to sign an extension and go to free agency, why give up 4 prospects, and not a guarantee of re-signing him? Right. And,
Exactly.
let the Yankees do that. Let them give up Jason Dominguez. And, oh, by the way, before we get started a little bit deeper here, a report just came out that the Yankees are not willing to give top prospects, their main top prospects for Soto. The Yankees aren't getting Soto if that's happening. I'm telling you that right now. The Padres are going to trade Soto, but if you're not going to give up a Jason Dominguez or their number 1 top prospect or a number 2 top prospect, it's not happening. And again, this is once again Brian Cashman prospect hugging once again, and it's a big concern with the Mets over the years with the Billy Epler, with all this and all that stuff. It's a huge problem, and they're holding on to prospects when you can get. Now the Mets are in a different story because of the fact the Mets can sign Juan Soto. I don't believe the Yankees can sign Juan Soto. I don't think they will if they trade for him. So in my opinion, I think going about it this way right now, where you're going with the back end rotation guys, bullpen arms, utility guys, the reason why Stearns is doing that is because nothing big is moving right now. Which big name besides Gray and Nola that wasn't an option for the Mets happened yet? So that's where I see, Chris. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like I said, there's dominoes that need to fall. Yamamoto's probably one of them, although I do see Yamamoto probably signing a little bit later than everybody else. Um, We've seen the reports about the Mets being interested in Eduardo Rodriguez. I think Eduardo Rodriguez and Jordan Montgomery are very similar pitchers. They posted very similar numbers in 2023. I personally would prefer Eduardo Rodriguez by a smidge over Jordan Montgomery, also due to the fact that I don't think Jordan Montgomery is going to be leaving Texas. I think at the end of the day, I think they re-signed him. I'm not sure why they wouldn't. But yeah, absolutely. There's other names to be had. You see Joel Sherman's report basically contradicting what Andy Martino has been spewing all along. But even Andy Martino sort of ponied up and basically said that the Severino signing does not affect at all the Mets' ability to go out and get a guy like Yamamoto, like Shota Imanaga, like Eduardo Rodriguez. They're going to be spending still. And like I said, the Mets spent what? Yesterday with those 2 guys, a collective total of around $15 million, call it $17 million after the incentives. Are you really going to throw a hoopla over $17 million for 1 year? I mean, seriously. So, like I said, these signings are just the tip of the iceberg of what's to come. There is going to be a slight bidding war. That's the issue that I foresee for the Mets. But like everybody was saying, shout out to the Till Mets Do Us Part podcast. They had forgot the gentleman's name, Michael Marino on that podcast. He was basically saying that there have been reports around the league saying that initially what thought Yamamoto was going to get around $200 million collectively over how many years, maybe 6-7 years, is now looking like he's going to be pushing into the 300 territory. And this is a guy that hasn't thrown a single MLB pitch yet. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be worth it, because that's my number one target first and foremost. But put that into perspective. Who else is going to be paying that money? Minus maybe the Dodgers. The Yankees are not going to put up that kind of money. I bet you they're not. So everybody's got to relax a little bit. And I understand the sentiment. I understand the fear of, how the Mets have operated in the past. He who shall not be named running the team. But it's not the same sort of team. David Stearns, like you said, is methodical. But I don't want to sit here and be a homer for this team. They have a lot of work to do. We all know that. And on your stream yesterday, when you were going over the Severino sign, you were like, if Severino was that third option for the Mets and that's how they viewed him, or that second option like he was for the Yankees these past couple seasons, that's a different story. That is unacceptable. But the Mets just cannot afford to do that given the roster holes on his team. So, yeah, like I said, a lot more to come. I think Eduardo Rodriguez, if you strike out on Yamamoto, it's not the end of the world as well. You got Eduardo Rodriguez. But from everything, what I've been hearing on Twitter and all these beat reporters, I think Eduardo Rodriguez might sign before Yamamoto. And Yamamoto might be taking his time and signing, to the latter part of the days within his 45-day window that he has. So we'll see how it shakes out. But can you imagine a 1-2-3 of Senga, Yamamoto, and Imanaga? That is absolutely ridiculous. And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people don't know what to think between like Imanaga, Montgomery, and Erod. They're all lefties. And how do you really break that down? Like, who is your preference of those lefties? I like the sample size that we've seen out of Montgomery and Erod, but when I watch the highlight reels of Imanaga and his motion and the movement that he has on his pitches, I'm not sure if the other two can replicate that. And he's such a crafty pitcher with his delivery. That's what kind of draws me into Imanaga. But like I said, you get any one of those three lefties to pair with Jose Quintana in that rotation, because I think elite rotations need to have at least two lefties minimum, at least. So yeah, that's how I take it. And like I said, a lot of Mets targets. Juan Soto probably not going to be coming to the Mets, unfortunately, with the recent reports of him wanting to wait out free agency. We've been putting together trade packages for Juan Soto. Like I said, I think it's a different situation if the Mets trade for him, because if Steve Cohen gives Boris what he wants for Juan Soto, you can't just turn that down. What other team in the league, if you test free agency, is going to match an offer that the Mets have for you? The Mets will probably come in at you with the top offer. And I understand waiting around just to see if another team matches it. But at that point, you're running a risk if you're Juan Soto, especially if you have a down year in 2023. That reduces the earnings that you get on that contract exponentially.
Correct.
So, you know what I mean? It's just the tail of the tape. We don't know if Martino is accurate in his reportings. I trust Martino to provide accurate reportings. He's going to throw a lot of fluff in there as well, but he seems to be well connected, at least at the very minimum. So we'll see how the Juan Soto situation plays out. There's another report saying that the Mets aren't willing to let go of high-end prospects this year. They're going to wait for next year to do that. That doesn't really make much sense to me, because at the end of the day, we know the free agency class next year is terrible. Outside of Soto and maybe Santander, what is the difference between waiting to trade your high-end prospects this year versus next year? The only thing that you can do between this year and next year is call up to the major leagues and have them struggle and decrease their value anyways.
Yep.
So that's how I look at it. I'm not sure what your take on that is, but
yeah. I absolutely agree with you. And again, everybody knows that I'm not a prospect hugger at all. I rather go for the known the known player, the player that has proved it already, because there's too many times teams, not just the Mets, but teams all around baseball don't like, the Yankees are a prime example. They're in our own city and we see it all the time. For years, they wouldn't give up their prospects for guys that they needed, and it would have helped them probably a lot more, probably get into the promised land where they want to go. We talked about Luis Castillo when, they didn't want to give up Volpe and it hurt him. He went to Seattle. And,
Right.
it keeps on going back and forth. They missed out on Cole, used to win a championship. They missed out on Verlander. They won the championship. Like it goes back to the same thing too many times. And my bigger problem is that if you're not going to trade these prospects, that's fine. I'm going to be okay with that, but don't keep them in the minor leagues and let them rot. It doesn't make sense because all I'm going to see is that they're going to have great numbers in the minor leagues and then not bring them up, and then your offense is struggling or whatever is struggling at the big league level, and then you bring them up at bad times, and then they struggle. Their value goes down. The team still sucks, and you're in this revolving door of mediocrity, and that's the biggest problem. I'm sick and tired of the Mets having half-ass ways of bringing up their prospects, not going all in for whatever player they might need. And again, I'm not saying, the Mets should go after Juan Soto. Yes, look, I do it. I call up the Padres and say, what do you want? Because honestly, who is off limits? Can you say guaranteed? I don't care if you favor a prospect or not, right? There should not be one player in your farm system that you're afraid to give up for Juan Soto. You'll be lucky that a guy is 24, 25 coming out of your farm system that is even close to Juan Soto, if half of Juan Soto, right? Maybe Francisco Alvarez. I don't think they'll ask for him because they already got a top prospect catcher, so they probably wouldn't ask for Alvarez. But if somebody tells me, if Padres say, I want Jet Williams, I want Alex Ramirez, I want Blade Tidwell, that's tough. And it'd probably be a hard to swallow for about 2 seconds. And then you realize you got Juan Soto. Now, the reason why I would do it is because I know the Mets can outbid anybody for Juan Soto. So I wouldn't worry about him going to free agency because I know the Mets will have the biggest offer. That's the difference.
Yes.
The Yankees are reluctant to give up top prospects, and you're hearing those reports now because they don't believe that they can make the highest bid because they're scared of the Dodgers. They're scared of Steve Cohen and his pocket. It's just that simple. And I appreciate the fact that they're holding on to prospects because it does mean something, but at some point you have to pull the trigger. Now, maybe at the deadline, if the Mets are in it and they need whatever they need, a big bullpen arm, a starter, a bat at the deadline, and they use some prospects, then I'm all on board. But they can't not trade prospects in the offseason, go at the deadline and not make the move they absolutely need to do, and they don't trade prospects because they want to build up their farm system. Well, keep on drafting well, and you won't have that problem. The Dodgers don't have time doing that.
Yeah, so that point that you just said about the Yankees having fear in their hearts about the Dodgers and Mets potentially swooping in for a Juan Soto deal come free agency because Juan Soto and Boris know that those teams are going to give him the highest offer rather than the Yankees is the same reason why last stream on the roundtable last Monday, I said this is the perfect time to make the Padres a low ball offer for Juan Soto. This is the perfect time. Then you force the Yankees' hand to make a move on their end. At that point, they're forced. You give the Padres a BC level offer and you force the Yankees to go ahead and top that or match that, what is the harm in doing that? At that point, you're not giving up any of those top three. I saw someone in here say Acuna, Gilbert, and Williams would like to be untouchable. And I'm sure that there's different levels to this, and I'm not a GM, right? And I'm not in these winter meetings. I'm not sure how these conversations particularly go. But what is the worst that can happen if Stearns calls up Preller and says, this is my offer up front for Juan Soto. Tell me what the Yankees have to offer, and we'll see if we can match that. That's all you have to do. Force the Yankees' hand because you might be able to get Juan Soto on a steal. And I'm not saying it's likely, but at least try. And like you said, if he does come to the New York Mets, I firmly believe it's not the situation as if he was traded to the Yankees for the same reason that you just said.
Yeah.
Steve Cohen is not letting him hit free agency.
Yes.
And he already has an established relationship with Boris.
Yeah.
he ponied up to what Scott Boras wanted for Brandon Nimmo. I'm sure he'll do it again for a guy by the name of Juan Soto, 100%. So that's all I'm saying. Just do your due diligence if you're the New York Mets. So
Yeah, and listen, calm down on the reports that the Mets aren't in on Soto at all or Ohtani at all. Not saying they're going to get one of those guys. I'm not saying that. But to believe they're not in on that is hilarious to me because of the fact that, again, where were these reporters when these signings happened, right? Again, Severino again, this is not big signings, right? Shouldn't the reporters be in the know on the little signings, knowing that it's not that big of a deal if they're in the know or not, or teams leak out something for these type of moves that the Mets just made? Because the Mets want to keep things internal. For all we know, they offered the huge contract to Ohtani. Nobody knows who offered contracts to Ohtani yet. We don't know that. We know teams have. We don't know which teams have. Obviously, we can guess with teams just by pure, common sense of who can afford them. The same thing with Juan Soto. You think the Padres are only talking to the Yankees? Because what I hear from Yankee fans is, and this is going what I had the conversation with all the Yankee fans that I work with. They were saying, "Oh yeah, the Yankees are gonna get him. The Yankees are gonna get him. Of course, the Yankees are gonna get him. They're the perfect match. They make the most sense. So no other team is in on Juan Soto, right? I'm not saying the Giants because I don't think the Padres would trade him in division, but teams like the Mariners, right? A team like that, maybe even the Texas Rangers. You never know. You never know. They have a ton of prospects. They won a World Series. They want to try to repeat. There's other teams out there that are going to go. And that's why Soto is not traded yet, because the Padres know at the winter meetings, teams are going to come to them. And that's why they have to move the Yankees yet.
My question to you is that we've been talking Soto, and I'm sure the chat loves Juan Soto, and I'm sure most of the people in the chat would love to have Juan Soto on the team. But say he does go to another team or he remains a Padre, right? We've been talking about Juan Soto. We haven't talked about what the Mets are going to do at the DH spot if he goes elsewhere. So, Rob, to you, would you rather see them fill the DH spot internally with a guy like Ronnie Mauricio, switch hitter, can provide you power, or would you rather explore maybe a DH market out there in free agency, maybe on a short 2-year deal? I'm going to talk about it in one of my videos on my channel here, in the coming days, but I'll give a little tidbit. A guy like Rhys Hoskins, who's probably not going to be getting a long-term 4 or 5-year deal. A guy like maybe Teoscar Hernandez, who might be in the market for a 4-year deal, but if you can swing 3 years for him, maybe. Or maybe like a Jorge Soler. None of those guys, in my mind, are going to be getting long-term deals. So if you can swing a 2-year short-term deal for a guy like any of those guys I just named that can get you 25 to 30 home runs, I would be on board with that. But if they make the decision that they want to roll with Ronnie Mauricio at DH2, keep Brett Baty at third base, or vice versa, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just think that would definitely be the cheap way out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, when it comes to when it comes to like the DH situation with like Mauricio, I think he's very near a 5 tool player. I think you're wasting his talents if you're only making him a DH. Even though if that's a worst case scenario where you might not be able to get any of these DH, maybe they don't like the contracts. You don't want to give a 4-year deal to Teoscar Hernandez or a longer term deal to any of these free agent targets out there that are DHs. Maybe I could do it with Mauricio full-time DH, but I think you're losing out on his overall talent. And in my opinion, I don't trust Brett Baty. I know people are like, "Oh, give him a chance, give him a chance." Sure, I'll give him a chance, and that's what spring training's for, giving him a chance. Like I thought Brett Baty should have got the starting job out of spring last year when he was playing extremely well and better than Escobar. I would have thrown Escobar on the bench and put Baty opening day third base, and I think it actually hurt him in the process. Where I think because of the instability inside this organization last year, I think it was just a bad sign from day one that the best players in spring training didn't get the jobs. Mostly guys that didn't deserve it got the jobs. And when it comes to the DH, look, if you get Teoscar Hernandez, I'm fine with that. I'd rather go out and get a DH that's on the market. Rhys Hoskins is my number one, and I'm gonna tell you why. The guy is a badass. This guy does not care. This guy is a home run guy, 25 to 30 home run guy. His average isn't great, but we need a little bit more power to protect Pete Alonso. He can play first base, so you can, get Pete Alonso off his feet on the field, which you might not think you should be doing at a guy who's only 29 years old, but you want to keep him healthy, because you lose Pete Alonso, you're probably in trouble, right? So you can give him a couple of days off. Not saying you're going to give, Pete Alonso 50 days off, but you can DH Pete Alonso and play Reese at first base. I think it's, what David Stearns is doing, and you see with the Joey Wendell, he wants guys that are versatile. And Reese Hoskins is a guy who can DH and play first base, and that's options. And again, he's going to come at it cheap. You're going to get a 1-year deal for Reese Hoskins, probably around 12 to 13, 14, $15 million, around that mark. Whatever his arbitration number was, I think it's around that. And that's what you'll probably get. So it's a prove it type deal. And I love those type of players, because they want the long-term contract. And Reese Hoskins was well on his way to getting a big contract before he got hurt in spring training. So I would go with Reese Hoskins and put Mauricio at third base and figure out what you're going to do with Beatty. If you want to try Beatty in left field at spring, see if that works out, I have no problem doing that. Or trade Beatty for a bullpen arm. Trade Beatty for a mid rotation guy. I don't know. I'm not saying give up on Beatty, but Beatty disappointed me a lot last year.
That's what I'm saying too. Like, we keep on talking about Beatty and Mauricio like they're definitively going to be on this team come 2024. Like, both of those guys, as much as I want Mauricio on this team, there's no guarantees that him or Beatty aren't packaged for something. And I understand you to be selling low on Brett Beatty, probably not the wisest decision, but you don't know how attached David Stearns is to these prospects. You don't know where this front office now, this newly developed front office, right? We keep seeing new personnel hired each and every day. Like, you don't know what they're thinking. So definitely not definitive in terms of what they're going to do there. But like you said, with the DH, if you go the free agent route, you can sign a guy like Hoskins. I was just going to ask you, like, do you truly think that Hoskins is going to take a 1-year deal, or is he more of a 2 to 3 year guy? Same thing with Teoscar. Like, I don't see Teoscar signing a 1-year deal. For me, a sweet spot for Teoscar would be 3 years, an opt-out after the second year, because you get into Starling Marte territory at that point, right? He's up there in age, signing a 4-year deal. I think Marte's making 20, maybe $21 million a year, what have you. Not the best decision. Hoskins, with his injury, maybe will take a prove-it deal. Mike was saying he doesn't want a low average hitter. Reese Hoskins in 2022 and 2021 had pretty identical numbers, had 27 and 30 home runs respectively, hit around 245, maybe 246. OPS was right around 800, a little bit north one of the years, and he hit 794 in the OPS category the other year. So like I said, these guys are going to give you similar production. They're going to give you similar power numbers, and they're not like Teoscar Hernandez is not going to hit 300 for you. Like, neither is Hoskins and neither is Soler. These guys are going to hit 240, 250, 260 with 30, maybe on the better year, 35 bombs if you're Jorge Soler. And you can definitely go that route. But if the Mets really do want a one and done before they go after Soto next year, if that's their plan, or if a kid comes up like Drew Gilbert or who have you, Jet Williams, then maybe you sign a 1-year deal. I saw someone saying JD Martinez, exactly what the Dodgers did for last season, or Justin Turner on a 1-year deal. Those guys aren't getting more than 1 years. So or more than 1 year. It's like there's different routes that you can take. But of course, you see another 1-year deal come to fruition, Mets Twitter is going to be like, they're taking the cheap way out. So it's no winning, to be honest with you.
Well, here's the other funny thing, right? I'm going to ask people in the chat right now and just chime in really quickly in the chat. How many Met fans wanted Kyle Schwarber? Right? How many people wanted Kyle Schwarber? There was a lot of you, right? Including myself.
I'll put my hand up. I was one of them. I wanted Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. Right? He batted under 200, but hit 40 bombs?
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. If you get a guy, and Reese Hoskins, I'm sorry, I'll answer your question first. I would give him a 2-year deal with a player option for the second year. So if he has a really good first year, he can opt out and go to free agency for that long-term deal. If he has a okay year and don't think he's going to get a long-term deal, he'll take the option and get paid for a second year. And it's not a worst-case scenario, because I think a bad year for Reese Hoskins is 20 home runs. A really good year, like you said, is probably 25 to 30, maybe a really good year. He's playing at Citi Field and not, Citizens Bank. So, you would take a couple of home runs off, but still.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, Kyle Schwarber was on many Met fans' list as a DH guy, and people are so in love with Kyle Schwarber, but he strikes out and hits home runs and does nothing else well. And again, give me a guy that bats 240, which is a hell of a lot better than some DHs. Give me a guy 240, 250, 25 to 30 bombs, and I'm okay with that because the problem with the Mets aren't getting on base. How many runners left on base did the Mets have? We need more run producers than Lindor and Alonso. They can't have 200 plus RBIs and the Mets win 75 games. You can't have that. You need another guy. The Phillies with Schwarber, Harper, Turner, all those guys, they are run producers. They're all run producers there. And, the Braves have Riley and Acuna. They got 3 or 4 run producers that have 90 plus RBIs. The Mets don't have that. You got Nimmo, McNeil, who are the guys who get on base, that are on base guys that are on base for the run producers. After you pass Lindor and Alonso, who are you confident in to drive in those runs? Because
Alvarez, that's it.
Marte was that guy in 2022. He wasn't in 2023. Alvarez could be that guy, but Alvarez, if he hits 210, that's not really helping the issue, right? Bat the ball. The Mets were so good bat the ball skill in 2022. Every time they got men on base, they weren't trying to hit home runs every single time. They were getting that base hit, getting that RBI, that 1 or 2 RBIs in scoring position. That's what they lacked in 2023. If they can get back to that in 24, I think it's going to be a tremendous difference. That's why this team is not that far away when you really think about it lineup-wise. Obviously, there's a lot of pitching that you have to get, obviously.
Well, so my point is too on that, like average, I get that it's an old school kind of stat, and I still definitely do value it, but you have to sort of play the lineup game with who your personnel is. And a lot of people are talking about average. That's why they don't want Schwarber. That's why they don't want XYZ. Juan Soto hasn't hit 300 ever since he left the Nationals. He hit 275 last year. And then he had a great year last year. He hit 275. He hit 242 the year before. So I'm not completely enamored with the whole average thing. Like I said, it really is about what these players are going to want for the contracts to fill the DH spot. Obviously, if you had a guess and you had to like have a preference of who you want as DH, you want that big name. You want Juan Soto. You don't want a Rhys Hoskins. Like you'll take Juan Soto every day over Rhys Hoskins, but you got to play the situation game. The Mets are in a unique position and situation right now where they have to simultaneously fill the roster and the holes that this roster have while evaluating the young talent that's 1 already on the team and 2 coming up. That is a hard medium to find if you're David Stearns. And like Ron was saying in the chat here, he's thankful that we're not GMs because we're willing to give up Brett Beatty in an instant so quickly. We're not saying that. All we're saying is that David Stearns, we don't know what's going on in the mind of David Stearns. We don't know if he values a guy like Jet Williams to play third base for the long run, right? We don't know how he views Colin Houck, recent draft pick for the Mets coming up probably in the next, I would say 3-4 years maybe. Like this is not only you don't have to look at 2024 only. This is not David Stearns. Like he's not creating a 1 or 2 year plan. He's creating a sustainable longevity recipe for success in 2026, 2027, 2028, and beyond. So you got to play the cards right here. Like I said on the last roundtable, the players that he gives up, if they go on and do great things, he has to make a decision, right? Because all these guys cannot see the field. I'm going to repeat it one more time. If you guys were listening on the last roundtable, then you probably already heard this. But for the new people here, I'm going to repeat this one more time. Not all these prospects can see the field on the Mets major league team at the same time. David Stearns is going to trade, whether it's in 2024 or 2025. There are going to be prospects, maybe some of your favorite prospects, that will be parted with.
Yes.
That's why the Mets went and did that in 2023. It's going to be a chaotic scene if he lets go of whatever combination and they succeed elsewhere, and the combination that he chose to say ends up being bust in Queens. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't underestimate the degree of difficulty that David Stearns has to undergo now. He has a plethora of options, but with those options comes great responsibility, and that's why he gets paid millions and millions of dollars to do this. But there's a lot of great baseball minds in that front office now, a whole different regime and list of personnel right along David Stearns' side that are tasked with this decision. And so these prospects that were already drafted by the Mets in the previous regime, it's just like football. I'm going to make that analogy. The previous regime's quarterback is not always going to be tied to the next regime's quarterback. They want their own guy because it's their own stamp on the team and the organization. And I think a lot of Mets fans have to realize that. And unfortunately, Brett Beatty coming up when he did, he's right in the middle of that situation. So that's how I view it.
Yeah, and you just brought that up about Stern. This is not his prospects, right? We'll go back to Sandy Alderson, right? When Brody Van Wagenen, with Kelnick, right? Brody traded him, who is drafted by Alderson, and then when Alderson came back, he traded PCA for Baez, who was a Brody Van Wagenen draftee. So again, it's not that Stearns doesn't, he might like all these prospects. But again, you have to, like you just said, Chris, and we talked about this 100 times, you have to pick and choose because you can't pay every 26 guy on the roster and bring up every prospect because they don't have room, all of them to play. You got to pick the ones you hope are going to help you now and in the future, and the other ones are assets in trades to make your major league team better, right? Teams that win World Series, we talk about this all the time. We go over the last 3 years. The Astros, the Braves. Look at the Rangers this year. They traded Acuna Jr. for Scherzer. They thought he was going to really help them for their postseason World Series run. It really didn't make a difference, Scherzer, at all. But you think they wouldn't make that trade again? Of course they would. They would. Because why? Because it helped them, not just the Acuna trade, but other trades as well. They used multiple prospects that they probably would have loved to keep. But they know they were going into the playoffs. They were going for a playoff run, trying to make the playoffs, trying to win the AL West. They didn't, but they still made the playoffs. They made the right moves, and they weren't concerned about, a top prospect here, a top prospect there, because when you spend all that money, you are a win now team. This is what I'm saying. If you have a $300 million payroll, you're not playing for 2025. You might think, worry about 2025, with the future and stuff like that and some prospects. But if you have a $300 million payroll, because if that's the case, trade Pete Alonso, don't sign anybody, bring up all your young arms and let them pitch, and hopefully we have a good season. Because what's the point? Why sign Severino for a low risk, high reward? It doesn't make sense, right? Bring back Michael Walker and Rick Porcello. Where are they? Bring them back. Because if you're not worrying about 2024 and you're going to have just to fill a roster, their payroll is going to be almost $300 million just to fill a roster on all low end guys. So it's going to be over $300 million on even mid-level guys.
Either way. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So it's like the people continue to say, you see this on Mets Twitter all the time. Oh, they're not trying to win in 2024. Yes, they are. Because if that's the case, they would have never gave Nimmo an 8-year deal. They would have never gave McNeil a 4-year deal. They would have never signed Verlander going into the 2023 season, because who cares about 2024? It doesn't matter, right? The fact of the matter is that you don't have a $300 million payroll and say, who cares about 2024? 2025 is where it's at. Because what the Mets did in 2022 and looked into the future for 2023 burned them when they were one of the best teams in baseball and had a chance of winning the World Series, because they didn't make that move. And I'm not saying there was a move out there to make in 2022, right? But Josh Bell might have been a better fit for the Mets than he was the Padres. He could have been dominant, right? Was everybody jumping for joy when Jorge Soler joined the Braves?
It was terrible in that the Royals squad in the first half. Yeah.
And guess what? What did he do? He won the World Series MVP for the Braves. Right? It's where you get, it's the guy that fits your team perfectly. And that's where I think the Mets have to pay attention and can't make that mistake again. If we're going into the trade deadline and we're one of the better teams in baseball, we're in a playoff spot and the deadline's coming around, David Stearns better not hug these prospects and say we're worrying about the future, because you know what? You might as well close up shop and forfeit all your games. Because what the hell is the point of playing if you're not trying to win a World Series? You're wasting your fucking time. You're the Pittsburgh Pirates with a high fucking payroll, and you're just not trying to win. What's the point? Don't go to spring training. Don't have a season. Give Alonso to the highest bidder, because it doesn't make sense, Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I mean, that was a classic rant, Rob. I like that. That's awesome. I think you're spitting, man. Like it doesn't make sense. Mets Twitter is gonna do what Mets Twitter does best. We all know that, but well, like I said, there's more moves coming. But what I wanted to ask you, because we haven't talked about Joey Wendell yet, and I understand at face value this may seem like absolutely nothing, right? This seems like a Guillorme replacement, right? Guillorme being non-tendered really didn't shock me. I think that he was a fan favorite. I definitely understand that. His glove was maybe above average, right, in most cases. But his bat stunk. And his father, let's call it for what it is. His father spoke out against the Mets organization in a tweet, and that probably didn't go over well with Steve Cohen and company too. So Joey Wendell is getting up there in age. He's a super utility man. 1 year for $2.5 million or $2 million, what have you, given the incentives. Um, I don't like to look past what it is at face value, but do you think personally this means anything for the rest of the guys? Do you think it means anything for McNeil? Do you think it means anything for Beatty? Or do you strictly think that he's going to be on the bench and he's going to play that super utility role if someone gets injured like Luis Guillorme did?
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to be like an emergency situation. But what I've learned from Stearns in Milwaukee, and I was looking over this a couple days ago, David Stearns, if you don't perform, he will make sure that, and this is why um, Carlos Mendoza is the manager, because the collaborative effort. David Stearns is going to let Mendoza know, listen, Beatty's not doing it, or whoever's playing third base is not doing it. Play Joey Wendell. Here's the problem. Too many times the Mets left players in their lineups who weren't performing and were giving chances to other guys. And there was no, oh, if you're not playing well, it doesn't matter because you're going to be in a lineup anyway. I don't think that's going to happen here. If Beatty or Mauricio or anybody else, McNeil, not playing well, no, Joey Wendell is not better than those players most likely, but it shows us, it gives a sign to these players like, we're not messing around. You don't perform, your ass is on the bench. We're in this new age of baseball where all these players are given starting jobs and they don't deserve them. Brett Beatty deserved it out of spring training last year. I was at spring training when he was raking and just playing extremely well, and Escobar couldn't get the bat out of the infield, the ball out of the infield, and that was a telltale sign that they were playing guys who they wanted because that was who they brought in. Like Billy Epler clearly told Buck Showalter who to play last year. Like that's already been confirmed. And I don't think David Stearns and Mendoza, now that they have this collaborative effort, there's not going to be that rift between manager and president of the baseball ops or GM, whatever you want to call Stearns at this point. So I see it as this. Wendell is going to be a guy, if somebody's not performing, they're going to sit on the bench. Wendell's going to play a couple of games in a row, give that guy a breather, and wake his ass up. There ain't going to be no more, pat him on the ass and say, go get him, keep trying. No. You suck, you sit on the bench. Next man up. That was what it was in 2022. You weren't performing. Travis Jankowski, when Nimmo was, having a bad month, Travis Jankowski played a lot of games. If you looked at it in 2022, and he was performing well, he was playing a lot of outfield positions as well. And again, Travis Jankowski is not better than Nimmo, Marte, Canna, but it's a situation where you play well, you're in the lineup. You don't play well, you're sitting on the bench. That's the way I see it with Joey Wendell.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like I said, I think it is that, and just to have that depth, like you said, I don't think we have to look past anything of these three signings that we've seen so far as just strictly depth pieces. Now, I brought up, I'm not sure if you saw on my channel, I posted a Brandon Woodruff video, and I know we've been talking back and forth on Brandon Woodruff. Like also just sitting out there, a free agent. He's not going to pitch in 2024. But when you look at Luis Severino and Jose Quintana being on 1-year deals left, Jose Quintana's got 1 year left, and what's his Luis Severino got signed for 1 year. There's going to be rotation holes to fill next year too. So I don't know how they approach this, because the depth's going to be an issue this offseason. It already is. And the next offseason, it's going to be an issue again. So I don't know. I don't know how we want to approach that. I don't know if that needs to be addressed this season. I got to take a look at who is in the starting pitching free agent market next season as well.
It's
But
not good.
Brandon Woodruff, it's not good, right? So top 10 pitchers right there. If you take him on the payroll in 2024, maybe for a little bit of a discount, but just make him, not so he's not unemployed anymore. Get him at a discount. You got a top 10 pitcher in baseball right there sitting in your lap in 2025 and beyond. So I know it's not as simple as that, but like I said, this rotation is going to be really interesting for years to come, because you got the likes of Vassell sitting up there for depth. He's not going to be anything more than maybe a 4 or 5 starter for you in the rotation if he stays around. Blade Tidwell's another name that I really like that has high upside, maybe a 2-3 starter in the league. Christian Scott, everyone likes as well. That's progressing slowly. So the pitching is lacking with the Mets, but there's some serviceable guys coming up. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens on that front. But yeah, like I said, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen here with Imanaga and these lefties on the market. That's going to be my really strong indicator of how this offseason is going to go for the New York Mets. I think it starts with those lefties.
Well, you know what? According to a lot of Met fans, the Mets are not trying in 2024. So sign Woodruff for 2025. Who cares, right?
Exactly.
Well, if we don't care about 2024, what's the point of not trading Alonso? Trade Alonso too. You know what? Maybe we'll get a bag of balls, maybe a bat. Hey, maybe even a Mets cap. You never know, right? I mean, this is where I get upset with people, right? People like like somebody put it in the chat. Wendell is a DFA guy. Yeah, sure, of course he is, because of the cheap contract. But Guillermo has been a DFA option for 3 years. Why haven't we DFA'd him? You need guys like Joey Wendell. Every team has it. You're not going to have every player on your 26-man roster an all-star or even a borderline all-star. It just doesn't happen. I mean, come on, guys. Jorge Soler was, an okay player and then had one great year with the Braves and World Series MVP and got a nice contract with the Marlins. And now he's probably looking at a 3-4 year deal from somebody. Like, that's just the way it goes. Like, and you talked about the pitchers coming up for the Mets: Tidwell, Scott, Hamill, Vazel, who you might actually see in this rotation, maybe in the bullpen this year. You never know, because I think he's going to get a strong look at coming out of spring training, Mike Vazel. So yeah, I mean, 2025 is looking up, because there's a pretty good chance one or two, definitely one, probably two, maybe even three of those young arms might be ready to go in 2025. We're looking ahead of that, but yeah, it's possible. It's the way I see it,
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It really is going to be a telling sign of how they go for that 2024, 25. What I want to ask you though is the bullpen. What's going on with the bullpen? What are we going to do? I know we signed Austin Adams, but there are names on the free agent market list that we should be tied to as well. Everyone's speculating about David Robertson. This bullpen, we can talk about the starting rotation all day, but I think that the MLB really has progressed to a league where you need those strong front end bullpen guys to eat those innings up for you when your starter only is able to go 4 or 5 innings, which is becoming a lot more regular in this day and age. So I don't know. It's something where I don't know who's what. I don't know if it's going to be Hader. I mean, Hader's not a front end guy, but like, if they have the talent for it, I mean, if they have the money for it, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't trust Hader outside the ninth inning. I've said that many times. I think he's that type of pitcher that I know you don't agree with that, but I don't trust him out of the ninth inning. I think he's a closer mentality type of guy where he kind of doesn't go balls to the wall if it's not the ninth inning. Nick Martinez, I thought would have been a nice option for the Mets. He just signed with the Reds for 2 years, $26 million.
Yeah.
I know he's like an
He was a former San Diego Padre, right? I think he was on the
yeah,
Padres
yeah,
before.
yeah. He
Yeah, yeah.
destroyed the Mets every time he pitched against them.
So would you sign? I know this is a hot topic, and I know we got into it on Interstate Mets Report. Like, would you sign and take the risk? I don't know. It's not likely either, but would you sign Hader for that eighth inning role?
You see,
I don't think he's gonna want to take it, but like,
well, he's going to want closer money, and you're not going to make him the
yeah,
closer. I think that's the problem.
yeah, exactly.
Now, would I think Cohen is crazy enough to do it? Yeah. Especially look, put it this way: if the Mets lose out on Yamamoto for whatever reason, and it's not money related, it's just he wanted to go somewhere else. We saw what Steve Cohen does when he gets mad when he wants a player, right? He wanted to sign Steven Matz, and Steven Matz took the Cardinals deal, and then not even 2 days later, he's like he told Billy Epler to go get a pitcher, and it ended up being Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett. So it's kind of funny how that situation turns out. So you know, I wouldn't mind. Look, you get Josh Hader. I don't care how much you give him. If you give him closer money to be the eighth inning guy, Diaz pitches 3 days in a row. You give him rest. You have Hader, right? I don't think they're gonna go that route, but
Nah, I
I
don't
think
think
they're
so.
gonna sign Robinson. I think Robinson's just waiting for the Mets to call him up at whatever point. Robinson's not going anywhere else. He's coming to the Mets most likely. If not, he'll go to back to the Yankees in a relief role, in my opinion. So he's gonna go to the New York team. But like Jordan Hicks, I know a lot of people have been talking about that in the chat. He's been a problem with injuries, but again, who hasn't been? I don't think you can, worry about a player who, if you always worry about injuries, you'll never have a roster. Brandon Nimmo was often injured every year until his contract year, and the Mets gave him 8 years, so they didn't care about his injury-prone status, right? Aaron Judge, injury-prone almost every year, and the Yankees gave him the biggest contract, in baseball. So I see it as this. Bullpen arms, I don't care about the names, right? Everybody wanted Andrew Chafin, including myself, last year, and he was a disaster. And the Diamondbacks traded for him for Paul Sewell. I see it this way. Just get all the arms you can in the bullpen. Fill them up. Minor league deals. You guarantee them an extra incentive bonuses. Just sign a ton of guys, because I'm gonna tell you right now, nobody believed that Robinson was gonna do what he did last year, right? Brooks Raley, nobody really thought about him, right? Nobody really knew much about him. He had good seasons with Tampa Bay. He was actually better for the Mets last year than he ever was with Tampa Bay. So I see it as this. Just throw something at the wall and see what sticks with bullpen arms, because you're going to pay a ton of money for bullpen arms. And, no, does anybody want Adam Ottavino back? Because he had a 3.21 ERA. I didn't even think he had that low ERA. I thought the way he felt, he had like a 4.5 ERA. It felt like he always gave up a big home run. Right?
If you bring him back to like a 6th inning type situation, sure, but him going out there in 7th and 8th inning is just not it. I mean, he can't hold the runner on to save his life. So I don't know. Am I lagging here? I feel like I'm lagging.
You were, but you're good now, I think. On my side,
Okay,
you
cool. I've been lagging for like the last 5 minutes. Apologies about that. But yeah, like I said, this bullpen has a lot of work to do. You need innings eaters at the front end of your bullpen. I think that's what you're trying to get at. Like Trevor Williams was that guy for the Mets for so long. Seth Lugo was that guy for a little bit, right? Before he went on to San Diego, rejuvenated his career in San Diego. And we haven't talked about him whatsoever so far in the starting pitching market. Seth Lugo is another name, potential reunion. I don't know if that's gonna come to fruition or not, but like I said, a lot of options for the Mets. I think people in here were saying Jordan Hicks in here earlier, another guy with high upside, can throw like 102, 103 miles per hour, but his control is definitely an issue. It really is going to be interesting how the Mets attack this bullpen. I think you said you were interested in a David Robertson reunion, right?
Yeah, I was because I know that he probably I think in my opinion I like Brooks Raley as the bridge to Diaz, only because Raley can get lefties and righties out as a left-hander, and Robinson can too. But I don't expect Robinson to have a year like he did last year, and he was the closer. So last year, putting Robinson, it doesn't matter. Rarely Robinson, depending on the matchups, it doesn't matter in the 7th or 8th inning, in my opinion. But Patrick brought up a point, right? The Yankees have a ton of relievers. Can anybody name more than 3 relievers for the Yankees? Yet they have one of the best bullpens in baseball. So it's like in a situation where nobody understands why bullpens are so, so much of a crapshoot. I say if you think you can turn these guys around like Adams, who, has a high strikeout rate, his walks are a problem. He has 3 pitches, 2-seam, 4-seam, and a slider. Throws his slider close to 90% of the time. That works well a lot with right-handers as long as you don't hang it. But Drew Smith is going to be a part of this team too. I know nobody likes him and we're just waiting for another ball to go over the fence, but he's going, again, there's a whole new coaching staff, besides Hefner, there's a whole new, development in spring training, all these new coaches. And I think Chris just popped off. I think he'll come back in a second, but yeah, this is the way I see it, guys. And when Chris comes back on, we'll get back to him. But when it comes to it, worrying about names that for the bullpen isn't always the best way to go in bullpens because, again, look how many guys, and I think Chris is back. There you go. You're good?
I me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the bullpen is just a crapshoot. I'm sick and tired of giving guys, 2, 3, 4-year deals. And like Ottavino was great in 2022 and 2023. It seemed like he always gave up big home runs this year and killed this team. And it's just, it's in a way now where just get a ton of arms here. You get a couple of arms that and some you won't know. And there's a pretty good chance that the ones you don't know probably would have better seasons because that's how bullpens work, Chris.
So do you we still have the likes of McGill and Lucchesi, and I know David Peterson's hurt, and I know the popular answer is going to be no in terms of putting those guys at the front end, but if they're not going to be, in the bullpen, they're just going to be sitting in the minor leagues, and that might be the best thing for the Mets. I understand that, but you have to find somewhere to put those guys. I don't know. I mean, I want to see Lucchesi in that 6th starter spot, but if he does make a transition to the bullpen, I wouldn't be opposed to it to have a second lefty there. I don't know. That's something where I'm trying to figure out in my mind how the Mets mitigate those guys because McGill honestly can't be trusted in the rotation. Peterson, when he comes back, cannot be trusted in the rotation. I'm tired of seeing those guys go out there and falter. I just got no idea. I got no idea what they do with them. So the bullpen situation is going to be interesting. Like you said, you got to throw something at the wall and hope it sticks. I don't think the Mets go after the top guys. Maybe they bring David Robertson back on a 1-year deal. I got no idea how they're going to do this, but the bullpen was bad last year, man. The front end of that bullpen was bad, and everything went to crap when Edwin Diaz went down. We didn't see him at all in 2023, and that just sort of seems like the point where the Mets season got derailed. So I hope they get it right. Like you said, Austin Adams is a guy. It's a throw it on the wall, see what you got from Austin Adams, right?
Yep.
The slider movement is crazy on his pitches. Uses it 90% of the time, like you just said. The movement percentage on his slider is absolutely insane. If he can replicate what he did, I believe it was in San Diego in 2021, in 2024 for the New York Mets, you got yourself an early bullpen innings guy right there.
Yeah.
That can go in and dominate. And his whiff percentage on that slider is absolutely insane. I was looking at his Baseball Savant page. The whiff percentage on that slider is insane. I encourage anybody who doesn't know about Austin Adams, go look at the Baseball Savant page, go to 2021 and look at his whiff percentage. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I think that's one of those signings where it's like, sign him, get him to that 2-way sort of deal, that split contract, see if it materializes. Maybe Jeremy Hefner, who survived how many regimes now with the Mets, can get something out of him.
Yep.
And maybe you find a gem, right? So I think that a lot of people are underrating that signing, but his sample size just isn't there. He's coming off of a fractured ankle. We'll see what we get out of him.
Yeah, and this was the Mets bullpen ERAs last year. 2.82, 4.17, 4.69, 3.75, 4.96, 5.26, 6.56, 6.82, 8.10, and 7.06. Now, guys that had under a 3 ERA was one, Brooks Raley. Other than that, everybody was over a 4 ERA except for Sean Reed Foley, right? And I don't think Sean Reed Foley might get a shot at that. Maybe, who knows? But again, that's the way bullpens go. And like I said, the market for bullpens usually start after most of the starting pitching goes, because there ain't a ton of closers out there. Maybe people consider Jordan Hicks a closer, but maybe Hader, obviously, but there's a lot of middle reliever guys, and they usually don't start coming off the board until like mid to late December. When most of the rosters are basically almost set, the bullpen arms start to move off the table, and it depends on what teams do trade wise, because that can you can trade for a bullpen arm trying to get somebody else as well.
Absolutely. I know you like David Bednar from the Pirates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, if the Mets aren't going to give up any prospects, I think that's not going to happen.
If we're prospect hugging and we're looking to 2025 like everyone says we are, then that's not happening, right?
Yeah, like I said, again, the Mets payroll is going to be close to 300, if not over 300 million. So they're gonna
Right.
bring in a ton of arms, and again, I do believe they're going to bring in Yamamoto. Like all of a sudden, the Yankees aren't the favorites anymore, right? Because I think they believe, like you said, everybody was like, all right, Yamamoto is going to get $200 million. Now that there's so many teams involved, and everybody believes the Mets are going to be the highest offer, because rival executives told Joel Sherman in that article that they believe they're going to tell Yamamoto in their presentation, whenever that might be, it might have happened already, that go get your offer and we're going to outbid it. That was what it was in the article. That was from rival execs. That wasn't Mets people in the organization telling Sherman that's what they'll do. That was other perspectives from other teams that are bidding for Yamamoto. So, could that be Yankee execs? Could that be, Dodger execs? It's people that know what is going on in this Yamamoto presentation, or what they're looking to ask for, and what teams are given. So I see it as this: spend all the money you want. If you're not going to trade any prospects for pitching, bullpen, starters, bats, sign the players you need to make this team what you want it to be in 2024. Because you can't tell me that a team like the Arizona Diamondbacks were destined for the playoffs last year when their roster looked mediocre at best, yet they were 3 games from winning the World Series. So, everybody's involved. All you got to do is get hot. All you got to do is have, if the Mets had the Mets, everybody's seen the Mets as an average team. The Mets had a 500 June, they would have been right in the mix in September for a wild card spot, the way it was looking with the 84 wins. So yep. It's that small of a narrow space of teams where all you got to do is have a month like the Mets have, and you end up being out of it. If you have a month that is, average or better than average, you would still be in a race at the deadline, and maybe Scherzer and Verlander would still be here, and we wouldn't be talking about needing 3 pitchers. Severino probably wouldn't be on the Mets. So
yeah, the whole situation would be different. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was that 1 month, and people never go back to that. People just make it seem, the Mets just gave up on the season. No, the players sucked in June so bad that they were 9 games, 10 games over 500 in June. And remember, June 1st, they were leading in the wild card. The end of June, they ended up being 7 games out.
Yep.
Like it's that narrow of, either way, you're on the cliff, and you can go either way. And that's what most teams in baseball are, right? And people are like, you're not going to compete with the Braves. Great. Did the Braves win the championship every year? No, because the division, even though it's nice, it's not exactly the only way to win a World Series and get into the playoffs.
Exactly.
It really does not matter. So, yeah, buddy, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, like we said on the last roundtable, I keep saying that because I'm repeating that in terms of what we saw around the league. Like, there's a mixture of teams that have success from the farm system, like the Diamondbacks or the Rangers, and how they do it. The 2019 Nationals, the 2021 Braves, those are mostly homegrown World Series champions. The Dodgers in 2020, the Mickey Mouse Championship, they bought their championship. Mm-hmm. The Houston Astros, another predominantly homegrown championship. Like there's not a one size fits all here.
Yeah.
And the Mets have the ability to do both. They have the ability to go out, spend the free agent money, however much they want, and they also have a chance to go and contend for a World Series with their homegrown talent. It's the best of both worlds for the New York Mets. And I think that, when we were nearing the end of the season, right, in 2023, what do we say on all of our videos? We said after the Scherzer news came out when he was outing the Mets for not wanting to be competitive in 2024, we all said that the front office is lowering the expectations than what they had previously.
Correct.
Strategically, though.
Yes.
Strategically.
That's the word.
And we're seeing exactly. That's the key word, is strategically. And I think a lot of people have forgotten about that because that's still the case. So, like I said, let's wait to see how it plays out. A lot of hot stove, a lot of offseason left. But I don't know about you, but I like the move so far. This is not me just being biased. Like I said, once again, these are depth moves. 1-year deals are always necessary on a team to plug in as many holes as you can before you get to the big guns. They're not going to go trot out a $400 million payroll, but 300 plus is certainly in the cards, like you just said, without a doubt. So these 1-year deals are necessary. They got what was on the market. They acted early. And I really do believe that Severino has what it takes to get back into his regular groove. If he's able to produce a shell of what he was in 2022, that's already a win for that value of a contract. It really is.
Yeah. If he gives us over 100 innings, it's automatic a win.
Yep.
Automatic. It gives you innings, and if he's on the field, he usually pitches well. Only last year was an anomaly. If you look at all the years, even when he had injury-prone seasons, when he pitched, he was good. Last year was just, all the Yankees were bad last year besides Cole. So it's not like, Severino was the only one. And what you were talking about when you talk about the strategy with the Mets, yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was so strategic because Cohen didn't say we're not competing in 2024. He says we're lowering expectations because we don't want to be the team that everybody picks as the favorite, and then we have to meet that expectation. And then when we don't, at any point of the season, we get killed for it no matter what. And it puts more pressure on the manager, the coaches, the GM, the players. Listen, they get paid a ton of money. They should not worry about that, but they're human. They do. And that's what I think Cohen was doing. Cohen was lowering expectations because of the fact that there was such high expectations for the Mets because of what they did in the offseason. And not even before they didn't do anything in the offseason in the last couple of years. Because Cohen was the owner and people were deathly afraid of him, it was considered all the pressure in the world and all this high expectation. Again, expectation or not, it does not having expectations or no expectations. The Mets had no expectations going into 2015. We all knew it. We had no idea the Mets were going to go to the World Series. They were a fringe playoff team 2 weeks before the deadline in 2015. So don't tell me that the Mets were going to be, a contender, because nobody thought that. Everybody said that 2016 was the year, was when they were going to start to contend again. That was Alderson's words. So, anybody can contend at any moment. All you got to do is play well enough to be in the mix at the deadline, make the moves you need to make if you can make them, and play good. At some point, the core has to be clutch at the right moment. We could talk about anybody, get Teoscar Hernandez, mid-level guys that are not the core of this team. If Alonso, Lindor, McNeil, and Nimmo don't perform in the biggest moments when it matters late in the season or in June when they were still in the mix, look what happens. So you can put anybody else you want around them. If those guys don't do the job, I don't care what happens. It does not matter.
Right. And like you said, like, money talks is one thing, but I do want to point out the fact that, like, when you have an organization such as the Mets, like free agents that are wanting to sign with a team that might want to sign with the New York Mets, you have to wonder if they go and look at how the 2023 Mets were run and how disastrous it was, if that plays into a consideration. But I don't think it does because the money does talk at the end of the day, but the Mets are doing everything right in terms of rebuilding that front office and making all those necessary changes.
Yeah.
And that still is a slow and early process, but like I said, like it's obvious, money does talk. We all know that. The Mets are never going to be out on anybody because of a lackluster front office or whatnot. As soon as Steve Cohen offers up the bag, that's case closed. But I'm just saying, food for thought. Last year might have some implications on the free agency, but I don't think that it's none. I think that we do have to at least acknowledge it, though. Just
Yeah,
acknowledge it.
a little bit, but this is why Stearns did what he did. That's why he got rid of the dead weight in
Right.
the minor leagues, the coaching staff, the developmental staff, the VP of player development, player scouting, coaching staff. He changed all that because there was probably some thought. And remember, David Stearns was coming from an outside entity, looking out from an outside perspective. If he believed there was some internal friction, internal problems with signing free agents because of the turmoil and the bad, I guess, stink of what's been going around in the Mets organization, the no stability, I think David Stern says, listen, get rid of everybody that caused this problem in 2023, even if they weren't the main cause. Maybe Buck Showalter wasn't the main cause of all the issues, but Stern says, listen, why keep any of the stink that was a failure in 2023? Even though I didn't think Buck Showalter should have got fired, I think he should have got one more year, but
Sure.
I understand why Stearns did it, because if he really believed from an outside perspective that people looked at the 2020 Mets and saw it was a complete debacle and unstable because of the staff, the front office, the coaches, then Stearns did exactly what he needed to do and saying, look, this is my team. We're doing
Sure.
things different, and players want to come here. Money talks, but like you said, if there was some stench of 2023 on this staff, but Hefner, I think a lot of people around the league love Hefner because Hefner, people already said it many times, and it's been reported multiple times. If the Mets would have fired Hefner, Hefner would have been picked up the next day by another team.
Definitely.
Because people believe that Hefner, with his analytical driven way and the way he works with pitchers, teams love that type of pitching coach. So other than that, almost everybody is gone that is worth anything. And Eric Chavez, which Stearns noticed, was better as a hitting coach than a bench coach. Even though Eric Chavez probably deserved to be the bench coach last year, it hurt the Mets because he was focusing on other jobs that he had to do as a bench coach, and it hurt the team as a whole. So he noticed that right away. He says, listen, I know you want to be a bench coach. They're giving him the same salary as a bench coach and keeping him as a hitting coach. So that just shows you how valuable they believe he is as a hitting coach and want him to just work on the hitters. So I see it as this. Stearns wiped out what he needed to wipe out because outside thought process was what you just said, Chris. People look at it as like, wow, this is an unstable organization. And why would I go there when it's so unstable? Right. And that's why and that's why I think Stearns got rid of the dead weight and possibly all the problems. And you just hope that the stable environment that Stearns is trying to develop here is going to be enticing to players, even though at the end of the day, money talks. The biggest offer gets the player almost 99% of the time. Unless you're Aaron Nola, unless you're Aaron Judge going back to the same team. Other than that, there is not one player in this free agent market that is going to another team that they weren't on taking less money. Guaranteed. Ohtani, no matter if he goes to the Dodgers or not, if the Dodgers don't have the biggest offer, he's not going there. Same thing with Yamamoto. That's why people are talking about $250, $300 million, because if he doesn't care about the money, he wants to be a Yankee, he would take $200 million for the Yankees if he wants that 18 number. You know what I'm saying? He's going to take money. Imanaga is actually looking to get $200 million. But I want to say one thing about Imanaga that I researched earlier. He has the highest strikeout rate than any other pitcher, even Yamamoto, in the MPB league in Japan. And I didn't know that. And Ottavino brought that up on Baseball Night in New York about that he had the highest strikeout rate in all of the Japanese league. And that's interesting because Japanese players are known for not striking out, putting bats on the ball. So that just shows you that his stuff is more nastier, probably, than people realize. And he's a lefty. So,
The movement, I'm
I
telling
think,
you,
yeah,
the movement and the craftiness is insane, man. Like I look at Imanaga and I'm telling you he's the real deal. And that little lefty arm angle that he's got going on too. I'm not sure exactly what he's going to get out of a contract. If he wants 200 million, I'm not sure if the Mets are going to pipe that up, but I would seriously not doubt his ability to strike people out, like you're saying there, because I mean we all know what Yamamoto's numbers were in that league, but to have a higher K rate than Yamamoto is pretty impressive. But every time I looked at him and his arm action and his craftiness and his delivery and the movement on his pitches, like that movement goes into a righty hitter. It
mhm.
looks like it's at the heart of the plate and then breaks right at their thighs at the last second. That is a really that's hard off speed to hit. So that sort of movement would play anywhere. And I'm sure his market is going to be just as strong as Yamamoto's, maybe not, completely to that nature, but close, right? Being a lefty pitcher, there's only really three on this market that people are really going to want: Eduardo Rodriguez, Imanaga, and Montgomery. So we'll see what happens. Now, if you're saying Imanaga wants up there towards like what the $200 million range as well, do you think it's feasible you get Yamamoto and Imanaga like Joe Sherman's saying?
Yeah, because I think it is. I think it's the fact that Montgomery is probably going to get close to that. I think Erod's probably going to get around the 140 range. I think there's more. I think a lot of teams believe that Imanaga probably has more upside than those two guys. I think they know what Monty and they know what Erod, which are very good pitchers. I think they know what they are. I think it could be a bargain at $200 million because if this guy actually is as good as he's portrayed, and he's just beneath Yamamoto, I mean, he can have a higher upside. He can be a guy that pitches in this league and could be getting upwards of 200 million, over $200 million if he was a free agent in Major League Baseball and pitching well. And I want to bring up one thing. I'm sorry, Chris.
You're good.
Right when brought it up that it's a dead ball era right now in the MPB. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with missing bats.
Sure. Yep.
If he wasn't giving up a lot of home runs, then I would say, okay, fine. It's a dead ball, but he's missing bats. That has nothing to do with a dead ball. They can't put the bat on the ball in a league where they don't strike out. That has nothing to do with a dead ball. So,
right.
Yeah, Chris, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say about the contract wise for those guys is that initially I was thinking somewhere around 4 years for those lefty pitchers. But now that I'm thinking about it, and that you're saying it, 6 years, like more toward the 6 year range sounds probably more imminent, especially for a guy like Imanaga and Erod and even Montgomery. Like I was thinking more of the 4 year range, but they might get a little bit longer of a deal at this rate just due to their sample size. Yamamoto by default is going to get 6 or 7 years just strictly due to his age. But like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting what the final number is going to be on that. But I would have never thought initially that Imanaga was going to be up there in the $200 million range. But I could definitely very well see it given the scarcity of this free agent market. So.
Yeah, and Right Wing also brought up about a 6-man rotation. If they get Yamamoto and Imanaga, they're probably going to go to a 6-man, and that benefits Luis Severino because when he's pitched on a 6th day, Luis Severino has a 2.5 ERA.
Absolutely.
So, I have no problem doing that if it benefits everybody. The reason why I didn't like going to a 6-man ERA, 6-man rotation last year was because you had veteran pitchers that like to go every 5th day, and you can't just please Kodai Senga and hurt your other pitchers in your rotation. If it helps 4/5 of your rotation, then you do it. I think Quintana can adjust, the veteran that he is, the innings eater. I don't think he minds at an older age to get extra rest. But with guys like Kodai Senga who would love to go back to every 6th day, and giving Yamamoto and Imanaga an extra day only makes sense, and it only can help the majority of your rotation. So I have no problem doing that.
Yep, I definitely agree with you. And I know it's far fetched, but I mean, even if you throw out, those three guys, Senga, Yamamoto, and Imanaga, I mean, I know that this is basically unheard of, but at that point, 7-man rotation, at that point, if you have the depth for it, it could be a possibility. Rotate in a Tyler McGill, because at that point, if you have that strong of a starting five, it really doesn't matter if you sprinkle in a rotation of McGill and Lucchesi in the back end, if not both of them. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm really curious to see what type of innings limit those guys are going to be on in terms of transitioning over from the Japanese league over to MLB. We saw how the Mets approached Kodai Senga being the lone, I guess, rookie in the rotation last season. But when you've got two rookies now, hypothetically speaking, right? We're speaking of hypotheticals. Two rookies in the rotation, plus Senga in only his second year. It's a really tricky situation to figure out, but it's a good situation to have. It's just you need the depth to be able to support that long-term throughout the whole season. So
Yeah. Christian. Oh, yeah, you're right, Chris. Absolutely. Christian just said, Mets went to a 6-man rotation for the last 2 months of the season after Verlander and Scherzer. Yeah, well, they had to because everybody and their mother pitched, so they didn't really have a choice. They were trying everybody out here. But yeah, I have no problem with a 6-man. I think if it makes sense for the majority of your rotation and it helps most of your rotation, I'm all on board. I don't think it can hurt. They can probably go maybe an extra inning, which actually saves your bullpen as well. We'll see. It's going to be an adjustment for any pitcher coming from Japan because of the different size ball, the different mounds as well. So, but we'll see. And Chris, I don't know if you have any final thoughts as we wrap it up here in a few minutes. Uh, we're going into the winter meetings. Tomorrow's December. In a few days, 3 days, the winter meetings start. What is your prediction with the Mets uh, in respects of the winter meetings, not just overall offseason, but do you think they're going to make any moves during the winter meetings? Do you think it's going to be a trade, free agency? Give me some names.
yeah, I think you almost have to, right? I also like you. I know we said at the top of the show, I'm not gonna discount or count out Juan Soto to the Mets just yet, even despite all these recent reports, just for the sole fact that the situation, and I hate to keep saying his name, Juan Soto, like we've been talking about him nonstop. But it really is a situation where if the Yankees are the only other competitors, I don't know if the Mariners are going to be on him or whatnot. I know they got plenty of pitching to offer up over there. It just makes all the sense in the world to just offer up something for Juan Soto and see how it plays with the Padres. It just makes all the sense in the world. I know the Mets are lacking in the pitching department to provide to the Padres, but you got to try. I know that the recent reports of Dylan Cease talks with multiple suitors, including the Braves, is out there. Dylan Cease has been a name that I've been mentioning on my channel from the start. The White Sox are completely open for business. Dylan Cease had a down year in 2023. Maybe you can put together a stronger deal than the Braves could. I understand that Cease is from Atlanta. He lives there. But that's another name that I'm targeting. But
Yeah,
like you said, I think it's an underrated aspect that like last season we didn't see the Brooks Raley trade coming out of anywhere.
yeah,
We didn't see that at all. And given the needs of this team, I really do think we see at least one trade for another guy coming from the bullpen. Now, I'm not going to give you a name of who it is because I have no idea. But coming into that offseason, last season, I'm not going to even lie to you. I don't pay attention to the Tampa Bay Rays. I didn't even know who Brooks Raley was. I'm not going to even lie to you. Um, but he's a stud, man. Like he proved it. He had his ups and downs, but overall, he had a really decent season for the New York Mets. And if they're able to pull off something similar, and I'm not saying they're going to get a David Bednar, I'm not going to say that they're getting a Devin Williams from the Brewers, but more of those tier B guys is something that they could definitely play in the winter meetings. But I know Amish country Mets fan Nelson is a big fan of Luis Robert. We'll see
yeah.
what happens with his situation in the White Sox. That's another bat that's out there. I really do think the Mets can't afford to wait around on the DH, right? They have to make a decision and they have to game plan for the DH. If they want to solve it internally, like you said, it's not the best decision with keeping Ronnie Mauricio off the field. you can't make him a strict DH. You could very well, but I don't think that's the best for his game. So are you going to sign a guy to a 2-3 year deal like a Teoscar Hernandez, maybe a Rhys Hoskins with an opt-out, or are you going to go the cheaper route, 1 year deal for JD Martinez or Justin Turner? Like, that's the decision you have to make if you're the New York Mets. But those bats are going to go quick. If I had to guess, those bats are going to go quick. So if
They
they
might,
don't have any plans of getting a big name bat via trade, you have to jump on one of those guys ASAP. So I think one of those bats definitely comes over in the winter meeting. So keep an eye on those guys, your Rhys Hoskins of the world, your Teoscar Hernandez's of the world. Jorge
yeah.
Soler is also out there. Like I said, if you have Jorge Soler hitting 35 home runs right behind Pete Alonso, hitting 230, 240, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
I know you are too, Rob. I'm perfectly
Mhm.
fine with that. The production power, the power for production is always going to be there. So, like I said, we'll see how it plays out. I don't think Yamamoto signs anytime soon. So if anybody's waiting for Yamamoto to sign like today or tomorrow, definitely don't hold your breath. That's going to be a long-winded process. A lot of suitors, a lot of money to get the final value is going to take a long time to happen. I think maybe the first couple pitchers that go off the market will be like an Eduardo Rodriguez. I think that if a pitcher signs in the next coming days, right? Like even Michael Marino on the Till Mets Do Us Part, shout out those guys if they're still watching, said it on their channel. Like Eduardo Rodriguez seems to be a lot more sure about where he wants to go and the value that he has in this market. So it all makes all the sense in the world that he's going to be first off the board.
Yeah.
So I saw the reports saying that the Mets were tied to him as well. We'll see how it plays out, but there's plethora of options. And if you see Eduardo Rodriguez go off the board and the Mets, and it's not to the Mets, don't hit the panic button. I'm begging you, do not hit the panic button.
Yeah.
So that's my final thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And you make good points. Again, I do think a couple of DH targets, I agree with you on that are going to come off the board during the winter meetings. Again, maybe Otani makes his decision and that really starts the domino effect. But I do think like maybe 2 or 3 of those DH guys come off the board. And I don't think the Mets are going to wait on that aspect because I don't think they see Mauricio as a DH. I think Imanaga is going to sign before Yamamoto. And I think that's why you heard finally the Mets are in on Imanaga more than people believe. They do Yamamoto. If not, they'll go after Imanaga. If they're going after both and Yamamoto's going to wait after the winter meetings, I would be really shocked if Imanaga, and you know what, that might help the Mets' chances to get Yamamoto. If, how cool would it be? I could see, the first, Sports Illustrated magazine with Senga, Yamamoto, and Imanaga on the front page, and the Daily News or whatever paper that still exists, So I see it as this. I do think the Mets are going to make a move. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a starting pitcher. I think Erod's going on the East Coast, I think it narrows it down to a couple of teams. So if the Mets, if the 2 Japanese pitchers are going to take their time, the Mets are not going to wait. They're going to sign Erod or Monty. And, if they do get Imanaga and Yamamoto, well, great. Worst case scenario, there's your rotation. And then, deal with it. It's pretty damn good rotation. You never know what these Japanese pitchers are going to be. But, if Kodai Senga, who couldn't, he was walking the ballpark in Japan, that was his big problem. And he came to the Mets. That was his problem early on. And then he figured it out. You would just think that these Japanese pitchers will figure it out too. So once again, guys, make sure you subscribe to Chris's channel. He puts out great content. You see his knowledge. He knows what he's talking about. Anybody who's talking about other Mets content creators in the chat, listen, I don't shy away from nobody. I don't block people on Twitter. I don't block people. If you want to come on my channel and you want me to come on yours, I'm always welcome to. I'm never shy of coming on anybody's channel. I don't care if we disagree. If I don't like you, I'll tell you, but that doesn't mean I don't respect what you do. All right, so I just wanted to make that clear for anybody that talks in the chat about, whoever you're talking about, Hut, Wardy, anybody else, doesn't matter. Everybody, sure. I'm just saying, I just wanted to bring that up because people, think that I hate everybody. I don't hate anybody. Again, Chris, what was when I first talked to you about the roundtable, I didn't even know you. I got to know you. You could have known nothing from a hole in the wall, right? But I get to know people, and you get to know me. You could not like me. That's fine. what am I really going to do? Change your mind? No. But we're here to talk about one thing, the Mets. And are we going to
Absolutely.
have disagreements? Absolutely. Are we going to agree on everything? No, of course not. But the respect factor of what we all do, because it is a ton of work. Trust me, we all know that. Editing videos are not fun. It's a pain in the ass, right? Going live for 2 hours, 3 hours during a trade deadline, 4 hours, it's hard. It's a lot of time away from everything else that we could be doing, but we love what we do. And it's because we get the support from you guys. That's important. So again, anybody wants to come in this channel, don't be shy to come. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to curse you out and call you a moron or think that, you're underneath me, because I never think that, because I think I am who I am. I'm a Mets fan, and we could talk Mets all day. I could do 24 hours if, I didn't have a job, so
Yeah, that's right.
I went on, I ran. I just wanted to put that out there since a lot of people are talking about it on the chat. But
Good.
listen, winter meetings are coming. I just posted a video about the news about Yamamoto and Imanaga. If you want to check it out, I go into more detail and more of my opinion about all of that, even though I talked for a mile today. But Chris, it's always a pleasure. I'm glad we spoke. We actually messaged each other at the same time about going live today, and it worked out. So I appreciate you coming on. 2 fourths of the round table. So if anything pops up, you can always hop on a breaking news story live stream. If you don't want to go on your own channel, whatever, you can come on. All right, buddy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Definitely will.
All right, guys. So once again, subscribe to his channel, subscribe to our channel, hit that like button before you go. It's crucial. Hit that like button, everybody. So as always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Another Mets hot stove in the books. Next time we probably get all together, the winter meetings are going to be on its way. And let's hope the Mets do what we all hope to do. With that said, have a great night, guys. Chris, good night, buddy.
Let's go, Mets. Good night, buddy.
Oh, they're hollering, they're cheering, and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue. So hurry up and come on down. 'Cause we got ourselves a ball called the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets.